Yeah, I'm excited. A new horror movie. It should be fun. Oh my gosh. All right, well, it was spooky. What? What's going on, everyone? James here with another real review, and today we're getting into all of my spoiler-free thoughts on Barbarian. A huge thank you to 20th Century Studios for giving me the chance to watch this early for review. Now, you can catch it in theaters this weekend, September 9th, and when you do, let me know down below in the comments what you guys think of this movie, and if you agree with my review, because, man, do I have a lot to talk about. And it's a lot of good things. Now, if you don't know much about the movie, it's directed and written by Cregger, who was actually one of the masterminds behind The Whitest Kids You Know, a comedy sketch series that I actually watched a little bit of growing up, and it was pretty hilarious. And the movie itself stars Georgina Campbell as Tess, Bill Skarsgard as Keith, and Justin Long as AJ. Now, like I mentioned before, this is going to be a spoiler-free review, guys. I went into this movie completely cold, not seeing one trailer and only seeing one poster, so I didn't read any reviews or get any first initial reactions. So guys, if you're like me, I would recommend going in cold. So even if you want to pause the review right now, watch the movie, come back and we'll talk about it, that's fine. But if not, I'm going to get into the tagline for the film, which is directly from the studio that doesn't reveal much of anything. Barbarian is a story surrounding the character of Tess, who travels to Detroit for a job interview, and she ends up booking a rental home for her stay. But when she arrives late at night, she discovers that the house is double booked and a strange man is already staying there. Against her better judgment, she decides to spend the evening, but soon discovers that there's a lot more to fear than just an unexpected house guest. And that's all I'm going to say about that. We're going to get into my positives right now, guys, but before we do that, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I love talking about movies, TV, and all the news in between. So if you don't want to miss out, go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on the bell, and hit the thumbs up button for more content like this, guys. It's going to be a busy weekend with D23 Expo, Marvel, Lucasfilm, and even some, well, I want to say some nice trailer drops, hopefully, that we'll react to as well, so don't miss out on any of that content. And again, get loud in the comments and let's talk about Barbarian. So guys, time for my positives, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but I will say this movie's freaking awesome. And it begins with how well directed and written this movie is by Cregger. I cannot believe this is the same director who did Miss March. I didn't watch that film, but I heard how terrible it was and has a 7 on Metacritic, so it can't be that great. But I will say that Barbarian feels like a fresh take on the horror genre, but it borrows elements from other films, of course, that make it familiar enough. But the twists and turns here were just captivating. I really appreciated not knowing exactly how this movie was going to end. Even though I did predict some elements towards the end, I will tell you that going into this cold helped the experience. Heck, I didn't even know what to expect in this basement, and it was just so cool to see where the movie took you and then ended up. I thought it was a satisfying ending, to be honest with you. But yeah, I did really enjoy the way that this movie sort of elevated my love for horror. And I was a big fan of how the movie was structured. There's a really nice use of time to tell the story of this house and its history. They even get cute and play with aspect ratios sometimes in this film, going from a 16:9 to a 4:3. So I really loved exactly how everything sort of unfolded, technically speaking. And simply put, guys, this is one of the more unique horror movies of the year. And previously I had The Black Phone as one of my favorite horror movies, and I will tell you that Barbarian, it jumps over The Black Phone. And when it comes to the acting by our leads, I felt like collectively it was really good, but individually, Georgina Campbell was the standout for me. She plays this character of Tess, who again is going to Detroit for a job interview, and I believed all of the terror in her eyes. I was with her when her breath was trembling and how she was trying to survive, and she was the smartest of the bunch. So yeah, she was the one I was rooting for the most. And to be honest with you guys, this is the first time I can remember seeing Georgina Campbell in anything, so I was really excited to get to know her as an actor, and now I want to see her in more horror movies. And then there are her co-stars, Justin Long and Bill Skarsgard, but we'll start with Justin Long, someone who I really like. He's one of those underrated talents in Hollywood for me, and he doesn't really get talked about very often, but Justin Long has range, and here he displays even more of that. He plays an actor named AJ, who is in a bit of trouble, but he is a jerk, a flat out jerk. But dang it, Justin Long is so good playing this role, and he sold me. All of his mannerisms, the behavior, it was never overly acted, and if anything, there was at least enough nuance to make him as a character believable, and I just really think Justin Long knocked it out of the park. And then there's Bill Skarsgard, who plays Keith, the unexpected house guest. Now, I will tell you that he's not in this movie often. Maybe he has some scheduling conflicts that he had to be taken away from. You could tell he spent maybe a couple of weeks on set, but he is one of the executive producers, if I'm not mistaken, or just one of the producers in general. But man, Bill Skarsgard is so good at being this creepy white guy. I guess that's all I can say, is because he's just so creepy, but it works for me. And of course, you look at him and you think of his previous works, but here, I don't know, the way the movie was set up, it sort of gave you vibes of, oh, maybe he is the antagonist here, right? And I won't say if he is or if he isn't, but man, it is so good. And they do a really good job at really giving you this sense of uneasiness and tension, and that's something you feel among all of our cast members. So yeah, it was natural and it really worked its way nicely into the movie. And y'all know me, I love good cinematography in movies, and in Barbarian, well, it's no exception. There's actually two things here I want to mention, the cinematography and the makeup work, but we'll start with the cinematography here. I love the way certain shots were framed. I was a big fan of the use of lighting in this movie and how it kept things hidden. And I say things because I can't really describe more than that, but when we're in this basement, it is so dark, and sometimes you reveal certain things in this basement that just kind of make everything feel much more uneasy. And I loved the way everything was shot. There are even some really cool point of view shots here that separate this movie from the other horror movies that we've seen all year long, but it is very unique, and I do love the way everything is set up, because if it not for this cinematography, I think the movie would have actually been less scary. And then there's the makeup and prosthetics work. A huge shout out to that department, because here in Barbarian, it was believable, and it was gross. Unbelievable. Did I say gross? Because man, I cannot believe some of the lengths they went to in this movie. And there is a gear that this film kind of shifts into, and if not for the wonderful makeup and prosthetics work, we probably would not have felt as strongly in those scenes. And I don't know, it made me grossed out, but that was the intention, so kudos. It wasn't Shake Shack, because Shake Shack is great, but I do think that this movie is going to gross some people out. However, stick with it because it is worth the ride. And lastly, before we get into my negatives, guys, I simply had fun with Barbarian. This year has been a weird up and down year for cinema. I mean, yes, we have that last chunk of the year to go, but I do feel like I haven't had a lot of fun with movies this year, and Barbarian, it is an exception to the rule. I loved my time with this movie, and I genuinely had fun watching it with one of my friends. But if you take your loved one, I mean, I would love to take my girlfriend to see this. It'd be something, but it is just so fun to play along with the film, right? It would be easy for me to just say, the crowd helps and not elaborate, but you know what? The crowd does help, but it's because of the commentary. It's because of just being so engaged in the movie and people saying, no, don't go in there, and you're rooting for people in this movie. So the film does its job, and it is a crowd pleaser, and I know Barbarian is going to crush it at theaters this weekend. But the movie is not without its faults, so let's get right into the negatives, guys, and talk about one thing that was at the top of my mind, which is the writing. Whoa. Hey, how can I enjoy the direction and the writing by Zach Cregger and then have it listed as a negative? Well, it's one aspect of this script that I didn't really care for. So the writing does get in its own way sometimes, and honestly, it is probably not so great in that last act. And the reason I say that is because the movie over-explains a lot, and we don't need that. We don't need all of the overly explained moments. I get it that the movie is trying to be very on the nose and doesn't want to leave anything up to the imagination, but sometimes it would have been nice to just leave things as they are so we could piece together the puzzle ourselves. And because everything was very obvious in that third act, I found that the predictability took away from some of the scare factor. Now yes, the more we see of this journey, the less scary it gets, and that doesn't mean it's less effective. It just means that they tell us so much and it doesn't leave anything kind of unknown. So yeah, the fear factor kind of gets toned down just a tad, but still, the writing overall is solid. That's just my one little knack that I have against it. Now, the second negative is something that I think might turn some people off, but I'm here to encourage you to stick with it. So the movie starts off pretty slow. There is a slow burn for about 20 to 30 minutes where not much is happening, and you might be thinking to yourself, are you really talking about the same movie that I'm watching? And I am. Just, again, stay with it, because after that 30-minute marker, the movie hits another gear very quickly. Trust me, I literally almost jumped out of my seat. That's how intense. There's one moment towards the end of the first act that I've just, man, it got me good. But you know what? it was worth the wait. So guys, overall, Barbarian is a movie that I highly recommend. It's probably my favorite horror movie of the year. This movie really does a lot well, and it doesn't do much wrong, and I loved our cast here. See, Georgina Campbell is so convincing in this lead role, and I really just, I rooted for her, and that's the thing. I never thought I would root for any character in this movie by the midway point, but once the third act began, I started to have a favorite all over again. So yes, Barbarian is a very well-directed, well-written movie that is worth your time in the theaters if you can safely get there. And if not, please try to find a way to watch this with your family, loved ones. Well, family if they're of age, because there are some things in here that, well, kids should probably not see. So yes guys, I loved Barbarian. I would give it a very strong 4 out of 5, and man, I am just so thrilled with how this movie turned out. But I want to hear from you guys. Let me know down below in the comments if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, or if you fall kind of in the middle once you see this movie in theaters on September 9th. And hey, go ahead and hit the big red button below for more reviews just like this. Now, I'm a chicken, so if I see any more horror movies, guys, I might get scared, might not have a good night's sleep. I am pretty tired now because this movie was on my mind. Alrighty, y'all. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening. And I'm never using Airbnb again. Nope, I'm a hotel guy.